So, during the last French election, I saw a lot posted on the internet about Marine Le Pen, someone who often had far right next to her name. I found this pretty curious since I don't generally think of France as being a particularly right leaning country, so I did a few minutes of reading about her and I came away even more confused. It seemed like maybe I didn't really know what right and left meant anymore. In this video, I want to talk about how people are framed in the media. I'm going to argue that the term far right, at least as it's currently used, is functionally meaningless. It serves to convey no information other than that the writer doesn't like the person in question, and it often serves to obfuscate that person's actual positions. Now, I'm going to use Marine Le Pen as the key example in this video. This shouldn't be taken as some sort of endorsement of her. There are plenty of accusations of racism or xenophobia that surrounded her when she was running for president, most of which are a little bit hard to dig into without being able to read French language sources. I'm using her simply to demonstrate a point, and by and large, she does not seem like a politician that I would support. So before we start, let's define terms. Quoting from Wikipedia, right-wing politics, quote, supports social or economic conservatism. In other words, someone who is right-wing usually supports tradition and the way things are, end quote. So social conservatism is traditionalism, including opposition to things like LGBT rights and often immigration as well. Economic conservatism generally means low tax rates and little or no redistribution through welfare-type programs. Now, left-wing politics, again from Wikipedia, quote, supports social equality and egalitarianism, often in opposition to social hierarchy. It typically involves a concern for those in society whom its adherents perceive as disadvantaged relative to others, as well as a belief that there are unjustified inequalities that need to be reduced or abolished, end quote. So, where does Marine Le Pen fit in? Not very neatly, it turns out. She can definitely be called a social conservative. She is a big proponent of traditional French culture. She is very anti-immigration, like very, very anti-immigration. But her social policies aren't entirely traditional. She supports same-sex civil unions, which is a sort of halfway step towards gay marriage, and also supports unconditional abortion access, something which is not common for conservatives. Economically, Le Pen should be seen as left-wing. She favored, at least during the election, lowering taxes for the lowest three tax brackets, the separation of investment banking from retail banking, and that's something you hear Bernie Sanders talk a lot about, and expanding the already extremely generous French system of social welfare programs. So she's socially right, maybe even far right, and economically left. Does it really make any sense to use the term far right to describe her as a whole? Now, let's compare her to another famous right-winger to see how they stack up. The Koch brothers are American billionaires who are famous for their conservative advocacy. They are considered right-wing or maybe right-wing libertarian. In 1980, David Koch ran as the Libertarian Party's vice presidential candidate. The party's platform included things like abolishing Medicare and Medicaid, the Department of Energy, the EPA, and the Department of Transportation. It advocated repealing all minimum wage laws, getting rid of corporate and personal taxes, so a 0% tax rate, and called for the privatization of public roads and highways. It called for the end of all social welfare programs. Now, interestingly enough, the Koch brothers also support immigration reform and a path to citizenship for illegal immigrants. So they are pro-immigration. Now, I wouldn't find it strange at all if somebody characterized the above platform, that of the 1980 Libertarian Party in America, as being far right. I mean, economically, it was very far right. Socially, at least in terms of immigration, it wasn't. Libertarianism doesn't tend to be socially conservative, at least from what I've seen. So here we have two different people or groups that could conceivably be called far right, who appear to be complete opposites of each other. Le Pen's economic policies support increased redistribution in a system that is already extremely generous, while Koch's 1980s policies were aimed at ending all social welfare programs and privatizing basically everything. On immigration, they are again opposites. Le Pen wants to end immigration entirely, and Koch wants more immigration. So, does the term far right even mean anything? I mean, not really. If two people who are essentially opposites can both be far right, then it doesn't serve as a descriptive term. What media outlets are doing when they use the term like this, they're making a sort of normative claim that's disguised as a descriptive one. Now, a normative claim is a should or an ought statement, like we should eat ice cream, while a descriptive statement is a statement about what is, like ice cream has a lot of calories. So in calling someone like Marine Le Pen far right, it seems like they're describing her, But they're really not. They're instead making a normative statement about her. Now, that might sound kind of weird, since just labeling someone as far right doesn't seem to be making some sort of should statement, but I would argue that it actually is. The normative statement is that this person should be seen as dangerous or outside the mainstream of acceptable politics. Now, I should be clear that I think maybe sometimes this might be a fair characterization. When you look at someone like Duterte in the Philippines or Bolsonaro in Brazil, they in many ways should be considered outside the mainstream of acceptable politics. It's possible that Le Pen should as well. But journalists should be making a claim like this in an explicit manner, instead of implicitly tarring someone with a term that has no real meaning. It all comes down to the purpose of journalism, which is to inform the populace. Now, I don't think any journalism can be truly unbiased. We all have our preconceived notions that will color how we see things. But it's a basic failure of journalistic standards anytime a journalist hides a normative statement by making it look like a descriptive one. For the term far right to really mean anything, we would have to go back to using the good old political compass, where right and left denote how much government intervention in the economy there is, and the up and down refer to the degree of government control, or authoritarian versus libertarian. So Le Pen is a left-wing anti-immigrant candidate, or maybe a left-wing nationalist. She's not far right. David Koch is a right-wing libertarian. Using precise terms is important, especially for the people who are supposed to keep us informed. So let me know in the comments what you think. Am I wrong in characterizing Le Pen as left-wing based on her economic policies? Does far-right actually have a discrete meaning that I'm missing? I'd love to hear from you. Until next time.